Progress comes on federal legislation that would make the United States more competitive in the microchip industry. Illinois tightens the rules for getting a firearm owner's ID card. And the future of the Iowa caucuses for the Democratic Party remains in limbo. We'll talk about that this morning with former Scott County Democratic Party Chair Alicia Gaiman and former Scott County Republican Party Chair David Millage. Great to see you both. We will start with Iowa and the uncertainty about the future of the Democratic Party's presidential caucuses. Republicans, we know, committed to keeping Iowa as their first in the nation caucus, but we likely won't find out until next month if the Democratic National Committee will keep Iowa first. State party leaders made their case last month with the DNC, but Democrats from 16 other states did the same thing. Iowa Democrats proposed several changes to their caucus process. A big part of it would do away with the actual caucus night discussions in person. Democrats would submit what the party calls a presidential preference card, and they would be tallied on caucus night to ensure faster results. We know Democrats have been criticized for the time it takes to get those results under the current system that's been going on for decades. This has been a huge deal for the Iowa economy, though, for decades now, the caucuses being in Iowa. Would this really still be a caucus, though? Is this a sellout by the Democrats desperate to stay first in the presidential nominating process? Alicia, defend your party here.
You know, it's an interesting debate, and it's had every 4 years or thereabouts as we kind of move into, first in the nation status and who's coming up. And evolution has been made more recently with adding, really to the calendar 4 early states. So that's kind of changed things up a little bit. But I definitely would support, the Iowa caucuses remaining in Iowa and us remaining first. It's going to be a tough fight because as we have seen, there's definitely other entities within our party that are quite vocal about, changing that up. And so every year that decision gets a little bit harder and harder to maintain, and position gets harder to take. But I think, in general, I see a little bit of a split happening now on the Democrats within party activists within the state. And you're seeing some people who are vehemently, opposed to continuing us our first in the nation status and being very outspoken about it. And then there's those who just absolutely love the process, love everything that goes into it, and want to maintain that status. I think realistically for candidates, we're still a very viable option. A lot of people can compete here. A lot of people get that one-on-one interaction that is known for the campaign season and cycling in Iowa. And there's good stories, and then there's stories that don't work for Iowa. So this last cycle, we saw Pete Buttigieg come out on top. He was a long shot presidential contender, and ultimately didn't have the bandwidth nationally to continue to run. But he really made a name for himself and garnered some national attention. So I think overall that's good. And then you also see Barack Obama coming out first in the nation, or first in Iowa's caucuses in 2008. And so I really think it's you're looking at different entities and different results long term, but I think overall it's a good process, it's a good retail politics, and it's a good chance for candidates to be able to compete somewhere pretty affordably.
No, I get the idea. I know obviously both parties want to be first in the nation. I know that the Republicans actually support Democrats being first in the nation too, just to have both parties being part of it. But David, this does sound like a massive change what the Democrats are proposing, more like a primary than a caucus.
It does sound like more of a primary than a caucus, and I certainly hope they can work out the bugs and keep the caucus format, because as Alicia says, the caucus format allows a not so well-financed candidate to compete, because it is a mostly retail politics. It's mostly getting out there and meeting the people and going to the coffee shops and the small meetings. And you can do that in a state like Iowa, where you can make a name for yourself and perhaps be successful. But it doesn't require a massive media push, as we've seen a lot of the massive media pushes. I think it was Steve Forbes one year and Michael Bloomberg another year, because I don't think Michael competed in Iowa. But it just goes with the saying, you don't need a big budget to compete in Iowa. You can make a name for yourself in Iowa by having a well-coordinated, well-run grassroots campaign.
Yeah, it is expensive to run a presidential campaign, but probably more affordable if it does remain in Iowa. Let's get to the next topic. More power now given to Illinois State Police from an emergency rule change. The goal is to keep guns out of the hands of people considered at risk of being involved in a mass shooting. It establishes a wider use of clear and danger reports. The change gives state police access to more historic information that could be so-called red flags about someone's behavior and could keep people from getting a firearms owner's identification card or revoke existing cards. This is a direct response to the recent mass shooting in Highland Park. It will take paying attention to more details in all of this to try to weed these people out. How much of a difference can a change like this make, David?
I don't think it'll make really much of a change. If a person has a gun and he wants to commit an atrocity, the fact that he's had his permit taken away isn't going to stop him from obtaining that gun. I think it's a step in the right direction, though, and anything that will help in the least to get these guns out of the hands of these crazy people is a step in the right direction. And I think this will help keep guns out of some people who might want to commit a mass atrocity. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I certainly support it.
I know Democrats
don't support a lot of gun control measures.
I know Democrats and Republicans are in line with the red flag law part of this debate. And Alicia, does this make much of a difference, though?
I think at this point we can't not do something, right? I think especially, I kind of hit that point. I was an interesting case because obviously Democrats get painted as very anti-gun. And when I was in the legislature negotiating with Republicans, we had all Democratic control when we expanded out the concealed carry permits in the state of Iowa. So I have a very kind of unique perspective where we wanted to make sure the rights were equal across the board, and we didn't have a lot of, some sheriffs were just not giving any permits and others were giving everyone permits. I think as long as they would safeguard against unwarranted reasoning behind denying a permit, I think there would be a little bit more appetite for that, and I think it could be more protective of what they're trying to set out to accomplish. But we're looking at a huge issue. It's not going to be one piece of legislation, and no pun intended, but there's no silver bullet in this case, and we need to continue working and researching, and I'd like to see Illinois continue. They've done a great job so far. In Chicago, unfortunately, they are, they've got Indiana, they've got Illinois, Iowa and Wisconsin right there on their borders with a lot more lax gun laws than they have. And so if somebody is, hell-bent on committing an atrocity like this, it is very likely that they're going to go across state lines. But that's not, in my opinion, a reason that we shouldn't try to do everything we can at this point. We can't see kids getting murdered at a 4th of July parade and people going out and celebrating our country's birthday, or kids in their classroom. It's like, I think we've all seen enough, and it's time that we have a really serious conversation, and I hope this is the first step of many that we see in our laws that change.
Alicia Game and David Millich, both of you stand by. We have one more topic to get to you. For those of you watching at home, we'll bring that to you online and a web extra at ourquadcities.com.